Hey guys, and welcome back to another fun day of music with Mr. T. Today we're going to take a look at another type of form called theme and variation. Theme and variation. In theme and variation, there are two parts, or actually there are multiple parts. There's no limit on the number of parts we can have in our variations. So a theme is something that is like the concrete set part that does not change, and then the variations are things that are different or vary each time. Before we get into an example or demonstration of some theme and variations, I am going to show you what is the theme of this piece. You may have heard it, you may have played it if you're learning how to play piano, and this theme is called Heart and Soul. It's going to be in a different key in this recording because honestly I forgot what key I played it in when I did the recording of the theme variation, but the idea is still the same. So here is the theme of Heart and Soul. So that is the theme, the main idea of what we're talking about or what's going to be played or presented in our song. And variations of that are going to be different. So they're going to use the same idea. That was just a variation there because I added some different harmony. So as we go on and see, we're going to listen to the different variations of the theme of that title or that tune, Heart and Soul. Alright, so we just finished the introduction of the theme from Heart and Soul, and you saw my rendition of the theme and variation of Heart and Soul. Now, we're going to take a look at some information and definitions about theme and variations and go a little bit deeper. We're going to dive a little bit deeper. Let's take a look at some different theme and variation examples, as well as look at the definition of what a theme and variation actually is.
So, in continuing our discussion talking about theme and variations, we're going to head to Music Theory Academy. And they say that theme and variations is a very common musical structure you will come across, especially in classical music. The structure is built upon a musical idea called the theme, which is played at the start of a piece. The theme can be short, 8 bars long, or it can be longer. It consists of a memorable melody, which we'll hear about very shortly, with some accompaniment. Once we have the theme, then it repeats with some other variations and differences. Those are called variations. After the first variation, there's a second variation, a third variation, a fourth, a fifth. However many variations the composer decides that are needed. So, we're going to take a look at a piece with a theme and variation in it now. This was composed by Mozart, as you see the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star theme. After the theme, we're going to hear one of the variations, and I'll also include a link in the video and the description below so that you're able to hear some of the different variations of the theme. Take a listen, and here we go. So here's the basic theme. So that was the beginning of variation number 1, where you heard the theme still there, but it was different or varied than what the original was. So when we're talking about theme and variation, we're always going to hear that theme, that main part first, and then we will hear the different variations. Some composers choose to do just one variation, some composers do many. In this piece, there are 12 variations, and these variations range from different keys, different tempos, different melodies, different articulations. So all the different music concepts we've talked about so far are what we are going to be looking at as we look at how a theme is put into a variation. Dancing Hands, how Teresa Carreño played the piano for President Lincoln. When Teresa was a little girl in Venezuela, Mama sang lullabies while Papa showed Teresita how to let her happy hands dance across the beautiful dark and light keys of the piano. At first, making music seemed magical, but Teresa soon learned that playing a piano could be hard work. Sometimes she had to struggle to make stubborn music behave as she practiced gentle songs that sounded like colorful birds singing in the dark and light branches of the shade-dappled mango tree, and powerful songs that roared like prowling jaguars beside towering waterfalls in a mysterious green jungle. If Teresa felt sad, music cheered her, and when she was happy, the piano helped her share bursts of joy. By the time she was 6, she could write her own songs, and at 7 she performed in the peaceful chapel of a magnificent cathedral, playing hymns that shimmered like hummingbirds. Music was Teresita's delight, but suddenly, when she was 8, a war changed everything. Guns blazed, swords flashed, and poor Papa had to rush the whole family down to the seashore on a ship into a storm, where wind howled, waves rolled, barrels tumbled, ropes snapped, and clouds bucked and kicked across the wild sky like angry mules. Worst of all, there was fighting here, too. The horrible Civil War, North battling South as soldiers marched and newspaper boys hollered about victories, defeats, funerals, and fears. Without a new piano, Teresa would have felt even more lonely, but soon she discovered that wherever one is, some people are friendly, drawn together by songs. Musicians came to her home, playing along while they listened to her dazzling notes and her dancing hands. Determined to improve, Teresa practiced graceful waltzes and sonatas, become booming symphonies and lively songs, her strong hands accepting the challenge of life's dark and light moods. People began to call her the Piano Girl. Her picture was in the newspaper, and her posters were advertising concerts where she performed with great orchestras that invited her to play solos. Teresa triumphed in enormous theaters where children clapped and cheered while their parents stood up and tossed roses. When Papa at her side, she traveled to elegant cities, and by the time she was 10, the Piano Girl grew so famous that she received amazing innovations, including one so special that she could hardly believe her eyes. President Abraham Lincoln wanted her to play for his whole family at the White House. But the country was still at war, so Teresa arrived in Washington, D.C. at the time when freed slaves were signing up to be soldiers. The injured moaned, and nurses groaned from the sheer weariness of caring for so many fevers and wounds. Not long ago, the president's young son had fallen sick and had died. Men argued about battles lost, battles won, speeches made, victories delayed. Teresa began to worry. How could music soothe so much trouble? Poor Abraham Lincoln. Teresa hoped she could entertain the president while his grieving wife and their 2 surviving sons. Her fingers might stumble, the rhythms emerging too slow or too fast. But Teresa was brave, and she believed in trying her best, so she entered the White House silently, clutching Papa's hand fiercely as she stepped into the room so red it looked like a storm or a sunrise. Teresa remembered how it felt to be a homeless refugee, and how lonely she had been surrounded by strangers, some of them rude and others kind. The memory of meeting past challenges now helped her fingers dance, celebrating the way that life had turned out to be a mixture of all sorts of feelings, happy and sad. But the piano was poorly tuned, making her music sound ugly. What should she do? Refuse to play? She stopped, feeling discouraged, until Mr. Lincoln smiled kindly and asked her his favorite song, "Listen to the Mockingbird." Teresa knew she could play this lively piece even on an imperfect piano, so her fingers leaped across the glorious dark and light keys, improvising the way mockingbirds do, the melody changing as she went along. Music swirled, twirled, and soared on wings of sound. The president listened to the notes that rose, swayed, rippled, and dipped like a bird in the blue sky across a green forest. He closed his eyes, nodded his head, stretched his long fingers, and tapped the tips of his fingers on his shiny toes. When the joyful song ended, Abe Lincoln stood up and clapped, smiling at the piano girl, who smiled too, because she knew that her music had brought comfort to a grieving family, at least for one brief, wonderful evening of dancing hands. From then on, Teresa felt certain that she would always be bold enough to share her musical courage anywhere in the world, simply by letting her fingers travel across the beautiful dark and light moments of hope. Maria Teresa Carreño García de Sena, born 1853-1957, was born into a musical family in Venezuela. Her father was a politician and amateur pianist who taught her how to play. By the time she was 6, she was already composing her own music and soon was performing. In 1862, a revolution forced her family into exile. And after they settled in New York, Teresa played at Irving Hall. She received several piano lessons from Louis Moreau Gottschalk. In 1863, her original composition Gottschalk Waltz was published. She played as a soloist with the Boston Philharmonic and traveled to Cuba, where she performed to great acclaim. Thanks so much for joining us on this read aloud, learning about Teresa Carreño and her dancing hands playing for President Abraham Lincoln.
All right, now that we have explored what theme and variations are, we've seen variations and themes from myself playing, from Mozart playing. We've done our story read aloud. Now I have a special treat for you. I am going to show you a few examples of me playing piano, as well as a short informational video about what else you can do with music besides just being a music teacher. So after we look at a couple of examples, then we're going to see a short clip about what other professions you can do as a musician. Take a look, keep watching, and enjoy.
Did you know that Abraham Lincoln was also on the penny? How much is a penny worth? That's right, a penny is worth 1 cent. Well, before we move on, there's one other interesting fact. About 5 years ago, my wife and I traveled to Canada, and we learned that the country of Canada has eliminated the penny because it costs more for them to make a penny than the penny is actually worth. So everything you buy in Canada is rounded to the nearest 5 cents. Everything in Canada is rounded to the nearest 5 cents. So there's no 3.97, 4.92. Everything either ends in 0 or 5 because Canada has gotten rid of the penny.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, was a very long time ago. But before we end today's lesson, I want to talk to you very briefly about a couple of things about President Abraham Lincoln. So if you've ever traveled to DC, I have when I was in middle school. It was a wonderful experience. It was also very cold. If you viewed one of our previous lessons about music of Japan, you've also seen some things about the Japanese sakura tree. However, in Washington, D.C., there is a memorial called the the Lincoln Memorial. The Grand Lincoln Memorial towers over the reflecting pool, anchoring the western of the National Mall. It is near the Washington Monument and the World War II Monument, and when you get there, you will see the Lincoln Memorial. The Lincoln Memorial looks like this. Here we go. My face is in the way. Here is the Lincoln Memorial, where it's located here right in Washington, D.C. And some quick facts about President Abraham Lincoln. So the biggest thing we want to remember and focus on is that President Lincoln was a president during the Civil War. And President Lincoln led the United States to ultimately defeat the Confederacy, and following his famous Emancipation Proclamation in 1865, he enacted measures to abolish slavery. So, we've talked about theme and variation. We've read our story. We've seen how Teresa Carreño has learned how to play the piano, and she has performed for President Lincoln. We've seen a few quick facts about President Lincoln, and we also found out which coin President Lincoln is on. So, you know Lincoln has a memorial in D.C. He's on the penny. But you can find Lincoln one more place. I want you to drop in the comments below where else you can find President Lincoln. Where else can you find President Lincoln? I'll give you a hint. It's in your pocket. Somewhere in here. But you gotta tell me, where else can you find President Lincoln? Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us today on our lesson of theme and variation. I want to put a little plug out for something that I've been using the past few weeks in our lesson, and it's been a game changer for me. I've loved it, and it's been super awesome. I've not had any audio issues or recording issues with making my lessons because I've acquired one of these. It's a snowball microphone, blue. I have the black edition of the black color, and it's been super awesome at helping me record my lessons because it has such a wide field of audio recording that I can be right here at my desk recording, or I can be all the way over there at my piano or keyboard, and you can still hear me crystal clear, and there's no audio interruptions or compression or anything. It's super awesome. So head on over to the link in the description below if you want to get one and check it out, see if it's something that you would like. Thanks so much for coming to watch us today, and I am so glad you came to join us. Have a great day, make awesome music, happy learning, and happy music making. Bye-bye now. Ha! You thought we were all done, but we're not just done yet. Actually, we really are. But I just want to talk about the graphic that you just saw. Thinking about it, theme and variation, remember we have that initial theme, which is that piece of white bread. Then the variation is now our white bread that's been toasted in the toaster. Toasted on 2, because after 2, it's like just burn up, right? Okay, anyway, cool. And then after that, we added some sprinkles to variation 2. And then variation 3, we just got rid of the white bread altogether, and we got some pumpernickel bread. I can get it out back because it's so good. So, theme, white bread. Variation 1, toasted white bread. Variation 2, toasted white bread with sprinkles. And variation 3, pumpernickel. Alright, we're actually done now. We're all done. I'm out. You're done. Let's go. Bye.